Medieval pub food was wilder than you think. What 12th century alehouses really served. The smell of bread, smoke and spilled ale. Before restaurants, before menus, before anyone cared about presentation, the medieval alehouse was already feeding England. Not nobles, not knights, ordinary people, workers, travellers, gossipers, and the kind of folk who needed warmth more than luxury. If you wanted a hot meal in 12th century England, this was your place. And what they ate inside those smoky rooms tells us more about medieval life than castles ever could. Let's get straight into it. Ale came first, food followed close behind. Alehouses existed mainly to sell ale. Food was originally secondary. But once people gathered, food became inevitable. Ale itself was thick, cloudy and weak by modern standards. It was safer than water and drunk by everyone, including children. Records from the Domesday Book show that brewing was already widespread, often done by women at home. When surplus ale was sold, an alehouse was born. Once ale flowed, hunger followed. Hosts began offering whatever they had cooking that day. No fixed menu, no fancy options, just practical, filling food meant to keep drinkers upright. Bread ruled the table. Bread wasn't just food. It was the foundation of every meal. Most alehouse visitors ate coarse brown bread made from barley, rye, or mixed grains. Wheat bread existed, but was expensive and linked to wealth. What you got in an alehouse was dense, dark, and heavy enough to double as a plate. Sometimes bread was hollowed out and used as a bowl for stew. These edible bowls soaked up broth and fat, making them more valuable than the stew itself. Nothing wasted, everything eaten. Pottage was the medieval survival dish. If medieval food had a national symbol, it would be pottage. This was the ultimate slow-cooked stew, simmering constantly over the hearth. Every alehouse had its own version, you know. Ingredients depended on season, availability, and, well, a bit of luck. Typical pottage included cabbage, onions, beans, leeks, and herbs. Meat appeared rarely for common folk, but when it did, it was usually salted pork or scraps of beef. The broth thickened over days as new ingredients were added. It was less a recipe and more a living pot. For travellers, this dish meant warmth and survival. For alehouse owners, it meant profit from ingredients that stretch for days. Cheese, onions and salted fish kept things going. Not every customer wanted stew. Some just needed something quick with their ale. That's where simple staples came in. Cheese was common, especially hard varieties that lasted long without spoiling. Onions were cheap, fill-in, and eaten raw or roasted. They show up in countless medieval accounts as everyday food. Salted fish also made frequent appearances. Herring, eel and dried cod travelled well and stored easily. Religious fasting days meant meat was banned often, so fish became essential. An alehouse could serve fish with bread and still satisfy both hunger and church rules. Meat existed, but it was not a daily luxury. Modern audiences imagine medieval feasts loaded with roasted animals. That's noble life. Alehouse reality was different. Meat showed up mostly in small quantities. Pork was the most common, especially bacon or salted cuts. Chickens were valuable for eggs, so they were eaten sparingly. Game meat from forests was technically reserved for nobility under strict hunting laws. Still, poaching happened. Occasionally, a rabbit or venison scrap found its way into a pot. But most alehouse visitors lived on vegetables, grains, and whatever protein they could afford. Pies, pastries, and, well, early street food energy. By the late 12th century, simple meat pies started showing up in towns. Now, these weren't delicate pastries, not by a long shot. They were thick-crusted containers, really, meant to keep the meat inside fresh. Sometimes folks didn't even eat the crust. It just acted as a sort of cooking vessel. These pies were portable, filling, and just right for travellers going from one town to another. Alehouses would often sell them to go, making them, I suppose, one of the very first versions of medieval fast food. Butter, herbs, and flavour from the garden. Despite the simplicity, medieval cooks knew how to build flavour. Butter and animal fat added richness, you know. Herbs like parsley, sage, and thyme grew easily in kitchen gardens. Garlic and mustard seeds provided a bit of bite. Spices from overseas existed, but they were costly and rare in alehouses. Most flavour came from local plants. The result was earthy, strong, and surprisingly satisfying. Alehouses doubled as community kitchens. Alehouses weren't just businesses, they were social hubs. Workers met there after long days, and travellers exchanged news. Deals were made, disputes settled. Food helped hold this world together. During the reign of Henry II, laws even regulated ale quality and pricing. Authorities knew these places mattered. Feed the people, keep order, maintain stability. Alehouses quietly supported medieval society in ways castles never could. What does this tell us about medieval life? The food of alehouses reveals a world focused on survival, not luxury. Meals were filling, seasonal and practical. Variety depended on harvests, trade routes and luck. People ate to work, to travel, and to endure cold winters. Yet there was warmth in it too. Shared tables, shared pots, shared stories. Medieval alehouse food wasn't glamorous, but it built communities. It fueled the everyday lives that history books often ignore. And honestly, that's where the real story lives. Final thoughts from Ancient Roots Uncovered. The next time you walk into a pub, remember that its ancestors served cabbage stew, rough bread and cloudy ale to people who just needed a place to sit and breathe for a moment. Medieval alehouses weren't about indulgence. They were about survival, connection, and the simple comfort of a hot meal. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden realities of the past and want more stories that bring ancient life back into focus, make sure you subscribe to Ancient Roots Uncovered. Share this video with someone who loves history and stick around. There's always another forgotten world waiting to be rediscovered.